Dennis Blewitt, attorney, author, also known as Dr. Gonzo.
Interrogation with those damn lights there. So, what I've noticed in the last several years is a lot of the fans really have never read the Fear and Loathing book, but they've seen the film versions and takeoffs of that. And most of the people that haven't read the book kind of missed the point. And the real point was a culture war, a dichotomy between defense attorneys for our conference there, followed by the John Mitchell Attorney General's group. And it was, the fear was what happens when the John Mitchell people come in where there's police state ideas and things like that. And that's really what the book was about. So when the police people came in, the prosecutors and the DA's Association came in, I was saying, man, I'm tripping. Did you put something in my drink here? You know, and I said, no, that's the way it is. And you had all these people coming in with crew cuts and flat tops and button-down shirts, all kinds of anal retentive people. And they just weren't like the fun group that we were. Anyway, there are a lot of times that people have said I was a civil rights lawyer. Mainly, I got into that sort of by accident. I was went around talking about foreign policy and anti-war policy, and used to go to various campuses. And then when they tried to draft me, I protested even more. And I thought, well, you know, I'm not going to be a warrior. Well, it turned out that first off, I was a warrior in the war on poverty, then a warrior in the drug war, and I can say that none of it's been voluntary. I've been drafted. So, but I think what most people don't understand is it really is a war, and there's real enemies out there, and they're shooting at us a lot of times. They're putting us in concentration camps, and they're coming down real hard. And the other thing that's happened is it's turned into an ideological thing. And this is what I think a lot of people didn't understand about the whole hippie thing in the 60s. You know, people get busted for pot in the 60s, and parents would call me and they'd say this, that, or the other. I can't recall a parent concerned about whether or not his kid was going to get addicted to marijuana all that period of time. They all knew it was a bullshit issue. What they were concerned about was it was a symbol of protest. It was a symbol of rejecting what they fought through or fought for during the Depression years and fought for in World War II. And now all of a sudden they fought for what they thought was a good dream, and their kids were rejecting it, and they didn't understand it. And that's what it was really about. It wasn't until Ronald Reagan came in and really started propagandizing hard that that became demonized. I know a lot of times people would walk in my hair, walk in my office, and the parents would ask us too, you're going to make him cut his hair. I said, oh, why should I? I'm not going to jail. He can get, whatever he wants to do, it's up to him. They were more concerned about hair back then than they were about drugs, particularly marijuana. So how do we get to this point? And look what's happening now. You have got one of the biggest cultural wars that I've seen going on right now. What's going on in the legislature, what's going on with the Department of Health, etc., has nothing to do with medicine. It has nothing to do with marijuana. It's we don't approve of what you people are doing. We're going to fight like hell to keep you from doing it, and we want to salvage our enforcement budget also. And that's what it's about. I said when this first came about, the cops aren't going to give up their gravy train without a fight. And what's insidious, what's really bad about this is that what people don't think about is how does this mechanism perpetuate itself? Well, first off, when I teach criminology at CU, we go into the funding of police, and I ask the little students in their bright-eyed about how many of you think confiscation laws are good, where the cops can confiscate criminals' property and take away their profit, etc. And by and large, freshmen are about 80% in favor of that. So I said, okay, let's do a little role-play. I'm the chief of police, you guys are the town council, the mayor, and you're saying we got to do something about the crime. I say, fine, let's run over more people out of town, things like that. Well, it shocks them, they're not going to do it. But think of this, if I really want to do it, I can break into the evidence locker, I can take all the weed that I confiscated from various cases. Every time my officer pulled out a Porsche, a Mercedes, a Cadillac, or an expensive house, they throw in a bag of marijuana, and they can confiscate the house, the property, etc. This allows the police to be self-funding. Now think about that. They bypass the legislature. And this has gone on for generations. That's why they're so damn contemptuous. They don't think the law has to apply to them because they can go out and make their own money. That's why we have things like Abu Ghraib. That's why we have all this other stuff. The police think they're against the law. So, what do we do? Well, first off, my philosophy is, if it ain't fun, I ain't gonna do it. Now, I remember the days of Saul Alinsky, who trained me on the anti-war thing. He liked to have fun. So one of the things you do is you look at these symbols that they really like, and you use the press. And one of the things I can remember he did is, Mayor Daley in Chicago wasn't being very nice to his constituency of Woodlawn. So Alinsky decided, what is it that we can get their attention? Well, the pride of Chicago at that time was its new airport, O'Hare Field. Now, what happens when the passengers get off a plane? They all want to go take a leak, right? So, what Alinsky did is he got his people there and they lined up in all the urinals in O'Hare Airport and they recycled so that tourists couldn't, or the people getting off the plane couldn't take a leak. You saw them dancing in the aisles and everything else, and it's funny as hell. Huh?
Let's go to DIA.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things you can do. The other thing that they did was Rochester, New York, was really proud of their symphony. So he announced that they got to lighten up a little bit on some of their discrimination. So what he did is he bought a block of tickets. Now the civic pride of Rochester was the symphony, the Rochester Symphony, funded by Eastman Kodak, etc. Well, let's buys up these tickets and invites all the black people from the areas that are protesting to a bean feed 3 hours before the concert. And they're going to go have a fart in the system. Now, that is fun politics, guys. And you guys got the chance here of doing something like that. You know, it just takes a little bit of imagination and a sense of humor. So, now the legislature, they're demonizing. That's it. What the legislation, and we'll back up, the constitutional amendment that you guys are operating under is very definitely on a medical model, not on a law enforcement model. So there's an ideological thing going on here. Make them stick with the medical model, not the law enforcement model. They're saying it's dangerous, we got to regulate it, and things like that. Well, bullshit, let them prove it. I edited the International Drug Journal, I do peer reviewing, and some of the articles crossing my desk now, from particularly the common market, are critiques of political action in the common market in Europe. They have legislation there that all social legislation has to be based on research and factually based. Now, what would happen in this country if we said we can't have any more voodoo science? Where the cop says, stick out your tongue, it's green, therefore you're driving under the influence of marijuana, which is actually going on right now. So they got to prove it. Prove that somebody can't drive a car if he's towed a little bit, rather than assuming it. You've got a legislator out of order wants to make it a law with the other traffic laws that they can take your blood if you've been smoking dope, and if it's in a certain amount of THC, then you're prima facie guilty of driving under the influence of marijuana. Well, I've been in Boulder. I practiced law in Boulder for 40 years. And one of the things I can say about Boulder is there's a hell of a lot of people toking and driving down there, and I've never seen a problem. But the only thing I've seen is they drive too goddamn slow sometimes. But, you know, nobody cracks up. So if they have to do research, so we got to tell them to, go down to the legislature and tell them to hire some proctologists and get their heads out of their ass. That's what you need to do. The other thing, too, is I've been thinking of some constitutional amendments for a few years, and I drafted one several years ago. One of the big ones that went down in the Vietnam days that they used a lot is it was a crime, criminal action, for any citizen to lie to any federal agent. Now think of this. You go in and the cops ask you something they don't advise you to write, all of a sudden they prove you lied to them. It's the same as perjury, and they can prosecute you for that. So they ask something, typical of you been smoking marijuana, for instance. You say, oh, not really. All of a sudden you're indicted for perjury, essentially. So what would happen if we drafted a constitutional amendment making it a felony for any person taking a public paycheck, receiving public funds from lying to the public? Yeah. Can you see those politicians out there standing up for their right to lie to you? And like what's happening in Washington with all the other stuff going on, they're lying to us right and left. So not only should we make it a felony to do it, these sons of bitches like to take away property with confiscation laws. So if we got convicted or caught lying, take away their goddamn pensions. Now, I don't know whether that would work or not, but I do have a suggestion that the toilets in the State House would be very full from fear. That's the kind of fear I don't think we need to get. Another thing that I've been promoting for years is just voting them on judges. And they say, well, this judge is okay, well, that judge is okay. That's not the point. The point is, it's the system that's corrupt. Several years ago, this was funny. Some lawyers in the defense group in Jefferson County, which is real conservative, wanted me to help organize a union for defense attorneys. And I used to be president of the union, so I've had some experience there. And then Dave Thomas got elected as district attorney, and he said, well, listen, Dave's a nice guy, let's give him a chance. And I told him, I said, you can have Jesus Christ and F.B. Bailey and everybody else in there, and the system is going to make it so you can't beat it. Because whoever inherits that bureaucratic system, that's already there. So how do you do it? You get rid of the sons of bitches. Now, the ironic thing is, I left right out of high school. I went to high school in Larimer County, and I just couldn't wait to get out of there because I figured I was in lion's den up there. And lately I've had to eat my words because the only county in this damn state that had any balls to elect judges was Larimer County. Of course, it took a McMaster's case and an $8 million judgment, but even then I got rid of it. So that's what has to happen here. They are gearing up to recriminalize. They're demonizing. They're beating you guys to hell in the press. And you're losing it. That's what this thing is going to be won. It's going to be in the press. So do something like make it a felony for them to lie, and then bait them into standing up for the right to lie to the public. When I first started here, they had sunshine laws. Now you've got the Patriot Act trying to keep everything secret. They're trying to indict the WikiLeaks guy for doing what a good citizen would do in informing the public. So informed citizenry is what's the basis behind a democracy. And as long as they can blow smoke up your ass, you're not going to be informed. So that's another thing you can do is go for judges. Now, the third thing is ask that all legislation be factually based. So, you can't say, we gotta send a message, they're big into this message shit, that we don't like this or we don't like that, and therefore we're gonna give you a zillion-year sentence for spitting on the sidewalk. And if that doesn't work, and if people still spit on the sidewalk, we'll make it 2 zillion years. And if that doesn't work, we'll make it 5, and that's what's happening. That's called sentencing. You got people doing more for hot cases than you do sometimes for a rape or homicide. That's not right. And why do we have that? Because they want to send messages. I'm right, you're wrong, fuck it. That's exactly what the message is. I got the power and I can do it. Well, the only way you can stop that is you got to take the power from them. And the only way to do that is in meetings like this. Now, unfortunately, I'm a little too old for this stuff, and I hope somebody picks up where I left off. But the core, the nexus is here. It really is. And you guys can organize and go out and do a lot more than what you think. But you got to get off your computers, you got to get off your little texting, and you got to go out and press the flesh. And you got to go out and educate people. You know, in the 60s, we used to burn through a mimeograph machine every 3 months or so. We just mimeograph the shit out of things. Every time we had a conference, we'd pass stuff out, and we'd try to educate. And, you know, we were confrontational. Down south, it was kind of fun to be confrontational. So we'd go down there, and except for occasionally, it was bad, like when they shot Major Evers. But, you know, one of the things we could do, you go up to these southern sheriffs and get them to knock the shit out of you. Now, why would you do that? Because when you went back to the camp, all the girls in the camp wanted to nurse you. That's what everything was about. That had nothing to do with civil rights.